In this video, we are going to explore app configuration, Azure App Configuration under the secure Azure solutions. Explore the App Configuration service. App Configuration provides a service to centrally manage application settings and feature flags. That's the thing. You put there configurations and flags. Modern applications, especially programs running in a cloud, generally have many components that are distributed in nature. Spreading configuration settings across these components can lead to hard to troubleshoot errors during an application deployment. Use app configurations to store all the settings of your application secure data access in one place. App configuration offers following benefits. A fully managed service that can be set up in minutes, flexible key presentations and mappings. Key presentation and mapping? Ooh, what is that? Tagging with the labels. Okay. Labeling of the settings. Point in time, replay of settings. Point in time? Wow. This is a good one. Dedicated UI for feature flag management. Comparison of two sets of configurations on custom defined dimensions. Enhanced security. Encryption of sensitive information at rest and transit. Native integration with popular frameworks. Azure configuration complements Azure Key Vault, which is used to store application secrets. App configuration makes it easier to implement the following scenarios: centralized, managed, and distribution of hierarchical configuration data for different environments and geographies. Dynamically change application settings without the need of redeploy or restart an application. Control feature availability in real time. Use app configuration. These are the libraries. App configuration. I'll take some notes, yeah? That's why I'm taking the title before. Let's see the Python version. Azure SDK for Python. Yes, but this is everything. And then the Azure, then app configuration. Azure Python SDK app configuration. This is already inside the app configuration. Client library. Azure App Configuration. You install this package. Identity. Azure Identity. It was Azure Identity. Yeah. Now Azure App Configuration. There is also Azure Storage, Azure Storage Drop or something. I don't remember everything. Now, client ID, secret tenant ID, Azure AD, SP. Service principal? Is it service principal? AD SP, create for airbag. Create that service principal like this. Interesting. I don't use that. I use Azure identity and then create, probably. Let me check. Let's ask ChatGPT. Azure identity create. Yes, Azure AD. Yeah, I just gave a pause, so let's get it from start. Let's get it from start. We were talking about the Azure App Configuration library, and the command is it app config create the name of the configuration, I think, resource group location, config store name. Config store, that's like a container or something. Web config credential list name. Service principal create for RBAC. Skip assignment. App config. Once we create a config settings, value content type. Client. Set read only, get configuration setting, delete configuration setting, list configuration settings, list labels. Yes, very useful library. Let's see the REST API. I think we can study this later. That will be out of scope of the video. You can study more. Just search for the Azure SDK for Python, then go to the SDK app configuration. Okay. Create paired keys and values. Keys serve as the name for key value pairs and are used to store and retrieve corresponding values. It's a common practice to organize keys into a hierarchical namespace by using a character delimiter such as slash or delimiter used for replication. It's common practice to organize keys into a hierarchical namespace by using a character delimiter such as slash or dot dot. I don't know the name. Use a convention that's best suited for your application. App configuration treats keys as a whole. Doesn't parse keys to parse keys to figure out how their names are structured or enforce any rule on them. Here's an example of keys. Key names structured into a hierarchical based on components services. App name, then service one, and then API endpoints. Okay, to use of configuration data within application frameworks might dictate specific naming schemas for key values. For example, Java Spring Cloud Framework defines environment resources that supply settings to a Spring application. These resources are parameterized by variables that include application name and profile. Keys for Spring Cloud related configuration data typically start with these two elements, separated by a delimiter. Keys stored in app configuration are case-sensitive, Unicode-based strings. The keys app1 and app1 are distinct in an app configuration store. Keep this in mind when you use a configuration setting with an application, because some frameworks handle configuration keys case insensitively. You can use any Unicode character in key names entered into app configuration, except for asterisk, comma, and backslash, slash. I don't know. Slash and backslash. Okay, in this case, this is backslash. These characters are reserved. If you need to include a reserved character, you must escape it by using backslash and the reserved character. There is a combined size limit of 10,000 characters on a key value pair. This limit includes all characters in the key, its value, and all associated options attributes. Within this limit, you can have many hierarchical levels for keys. Design key namespaces. There are two general approaches to naming keys used for configuration data: flat or hierarchical. Hierarchical.
Hierarchical.
Hierarchical. Hierarchical. Key name function as spaces in a sentence. Hierarchical. These methods are similar from an application usage standpoint, but hierarchical naming offers many advantages. Easier to read. Instead of one long sequence of characters, delimiters in hierarchical key name function as spaces in a sentence. Easier to manage. A key name hierarchy represents the logical groups of configuration data. Easier to use. It's simpler to write a query that pattern matches keys in a hierarchical structure and retrieves only a portion of configuration data. Label keys. Key values in app configuration can optionally have a label attribute. Labels are used to differentiate key values with the same key. A key A1 with labels A and B forms two separate keys in an app configuration store. By default, key value has no label. To explicitly reference a key value without a label, use \0. Okay. Label provides a convenient way to create variants of a key. A common use of labels is to specify multiple environments for the same key. Key and value. This is the key, and the label is this. Version key values. Version key app configuration doesn't version key values automatically as they are modified. Use labels as a way to create multiple versions of a key value. For example, you can input an application version number or a git and commit ID in the labels to identify key values associated with a particular software build. Query key values. Each key value is uniquely identified by its key plus label that can be /0. You query an app configuration store for key values by specifying a pattern. The app configuration store returns all key values that match the pattern, including their corresponding values and attributes. Values assigned to keys are also Unicode strings. Values assigned to keys are also Unicode strings. You can use all Unicode characters for values. There are an optional user-defined content Y associated with each value. Use this attribute to store information, for example, an encoding schema about a value that helps your application to process it properly. Configuration data stored in an app configuration store, which includes all keys and values, is encrypted at rest and in transit. App configuration isn't the replacement solution for Azure Key Vault. Don't store application secrets. Feature management is a modern solution. Oh, one moment, I want to take some notes. I did. Feature management is a modern software development practice that decouples feature releases from code deployment and enables quick changes to feature availability on demand. It uses a technique called feature flags, also known as feature toggles, feature switches, and so on. Basic concept. Feature flag is a variable with a binary state on/off. The feature flag, also known as associated code block. The state of the feature flag triggers whether the code block is run or not. Feature manager is an application package that handles the life cycle of all the feature flags in an application. The feature manager typically provides extra functionality such as caching feature flags and updating their states. Filter is a rule for evaluating the state of a feature flag. A user group, advice, browser type, geographic location, the time window are all examples of what a filter can represent. An effective implementation of feature management consists of at least two components working in concert. Working in concert. The word concert has a couple of common meanings. Musical performance. No. Concert. Yeah. Agreement or coordination. Formally used. Agreement. Two countries acted in concert to enforce the new law. Worked in concert in finished project. Agreement. Coordination. Probably coordination then. An effective implementation of feature management consists of at least two components working in concert. An application that makes use of feature flags. A separate repository that stores the feature flags and their current states. How these components interact is illustrated in the following example. Okay, feature flag is on, then this code runs. This beta user, feature flag. Each feature flag has two parts, a name and a list of one or more filters. Name, feature management, feature A, feature B, feature C, and enabled for percentage, parameters, values, filters. If a feature state is on, that is when its value is true. A filter defines a use case for when a feature should be turned on. When a feature flag has multiple filters, the filter list is traversed in order until one of the filters determines the feature should be enabled. At the point the feature flag is on and any remaining filter results are skipped, if no filter indicates the feature should be enabled, the feature flag is off. And then there is a OR relation between the filters. The feature manager Feature manager. The feature manager supports app settings JSON as a configuration source for feature flags. The following example shows how to set up feature flags in a JSON file. Let's see that. Feature ABC enabled for percentage feature flag repository. To use feature flags effectively, you need to externalize all the feature flags used in an application. This approach allows you to change feature flag states without modifying and redeploying the application itself. Azure App Configuration is designed to be a centralized repository for feature flags. You can use it to define different kinds of feature flags and manipulate their state quickly and confidentially. You can then use the app configuration libraries for various programming languages, frameworks, and to easily access these flags from your application. Secure app config data. Customer managed keys, private endpoints, managed identities. Encrypt configuration data by using customer managed keys. Azure App Configuration encrypts sensitive information at rest using AES encryption key provided by Microsoft. Azure App Configuration instance has its own encryption key managed by the service and used in the encryption sensitive information. Used to encrypt sensitive information. Sensitive information includes the values found in key value pairs. When customer managed key capability is enabled, app configuration uses a managed identity to the app configuration instance to authenticate with the Microsoft Entra ID. The managed identity then calls Azure Key Vault and wraps the app configuration instance encryption key. The wrapped encryption key is then stored and unwrapped encryption key is cached within app configuration for 1 hour. Okay, then the user managed key is stored in the key vault, but while the app configuration, Azure App Configuration booting, I think, or yeah, it grabs the key from Key Vault. Refreshes, app config refreshes the unwrapped version. It's already in the cache of the app config instances encryption key hourly. Okay. This ensures availability under normal operation conditions. Enable customer managed key capability. The following components are required to successfully enable the customer managed key capability for Azure configuration. Standard tier Azure App Configuration instance. Azure Key Vault with soft delete and purge protection features enabled. Standard tier Azure App Configuration instance. Azure Key Vault with soft delete and purge protection features enabled. Okay, let's get from start. The following components are required to successfully enable the customer managed key capability. Standard tier Azure App Configuration instance. Standard is needed. Azure Key Vault with soft. Okay, what are the tiers then? What else do we have? Two pricing tiers, free and standard. Okay, So enabled user managed the unique standard. Azure Key Vault with soft delete and purge protection features enabled. Probably these are needed because those two services are coupled with each other. So once the key or the user managed key, right, the encryption key is removed from the key vault, then the app configuration service should know about it. Maybe it still requires some reference ID or something. I don't know. Okay, an RSA or RSA HSM key with the key vault. The key must not be expired. It must be enabled, and it must have both wrap and unwrap capability enabled. Once these Once these services are configured, two steps remain to allow Azure App Configuration to use Key Vault key. Once these services are configured, two steps remain to allow Azure App Configuration to use Key Vault key. Assign a managed identity to the Azure App Configuration instance. Assign a managed identity to the app configuration instance. Grant the identity get wrap unwrap permissions. Grant the identity permissions in the target key vault's access policy. Get wrap unwrap permissions. Yeah, this identity can get the key from the key vault, wrap it or unwrap it. So these permissions are needed. I think I should. Let's summarize this. Requirements. Standard here. Azure Key Vault with soft delete enabled purge protection enabled RSA or RSA HSM key in the Key Vault that is not expired enabled has wrap and unwrap permissions. In the configuration steps, assign enable the managed identity on app config and grant access to get wrap and unwrap. Very good. Private endpoints. You can use private endpoints for Azure App Configuration to allow clients on a virtual network to securely access data over a private link. The private endpoint uses an IP address from the virtual network address space for your application configuration store. Network traffic between the client on the virtual network and the app configuration store traverses over the virtual network using a private link on the Microsoft Backbone network, eliminating exposure to the public internet. Using private endpoints for your app configuration store enables you 2. Secure your application configuration details by configuring the firewall to block all connections to the app config on the public endpoint. Increase security for virtual network, ensuring data doesn't escape. Securely connect to the app configuration store from an on-premise network that connect to the virtual network using VPN express route with private peering. Manage identities. From Enter ID allows app configuration easily access Enter ID protected resources such as key vault. Identity is managed by the Azure platform. It doesn't require you to provision or rotate. Yeah. System assigned identity is tied to your configuration store. It's deleted if your configuration store is deleted. A configuration store can only have a system assigned identity. Only have one system. A user assigned identity is standalone Azure resource that can be assigned to your config store. Config store can have multiple user assigned identity. Add a system assigned identity. To set up managed identity using Azure CLI, use Azure App Config identity assign command against an existing configuration store. Following Azure CLI example creates a system assigned identity for an Azure App Configuration store named blah blah. Identity assign. Resource name, and assign. It enables the system assigned identity. User assigned identity. Then you use this one, Azure Identity Create. First, the identity creation. And then Azure App Config identity assign name, resource group, and identity here. If you give the identity, it's using that one. If you don't give the identity, it's creating or enables the system assigned one. I want to still know the difference between Azure Identity Create versus Azure SP AD SP Create. Forgot versus. You are referring to two related but different Azure CLI commands. Azure Identity Create creates a managed identity. This command creates a user assigned managed identity. You get an identity with client ID, principal ID, and resource ID that can be assigned to Azure resources. Yes, Azure AD SP Create creates a service principal. Yes, service principal. Older format. This is part of managing service principals used in app registrations or automation. It has been deprecated in favor of Create for Airbag or using Microsoft Graph. To create a service principal directly, Azure AD SP Create ID But to create and assign a new SP with role permissions, use this one, SP create for RBAC. Name, role, scopes, very good. Creates a user assigned managed identity. Creates a service principal for an existing app used for assigning to Azure resources. Can I create an user assigns your user? Let's say, can I create an identity for using Graph API? User service principal app registration. This is standard and recommended way to authenticate apps or automation scripts against Microsoft Graph. Azure AD app create. Azure AD service principal create. Service principal create for RBAC. Assign Microsoft Graph API permissions like blah blah. Azure REST post. Azure REST post method and URL and the body. Option 2, managed identity, limited graph support. System assigned or user assigned managed identities can access Microsoft Graph, but only from within an Azure resource like VM, app service, function, etc. Microsoft Graph must support Azure AD Workload Identity Federation for the specific resource type. Example, user managed identity to call Graph API from Azure function. Assign Graph API permissions to the managed identity via Graph role assignments. Summary. Automation script apps, recommended identity, service principal, app registration. Most flexible, blah blah. Azure resources. Virtual machine function calling graph, managed identity. Cross-tenant or external app, app registration. Okay, but it didn't fit well. So, can I use them interchangeably? Short answer is you cannot use service principals and managed identities completely interchangeably. They are related but serve different purposes, and each has specific usage contexts. Managed identity versus service principal. Use case: Azure resources accessing other Azure resource services. General app to Azure. General app to Azure or app to Graph authentication. App to Azure. App to Azure authentication. Okay. Then my app can have one app registration, but the resource which is running the app, web app, can have a managed identity as well, huh? Is it correct then? Were usable only with Azure resources. Managed identity is only can be used only within Azure resources. Service principal anywhere. Local dev, CI/CD, on-prem, external apps. Service principles, local dev, CI/CD, on-prem, external apps. Okay. Now we are getting understand. The service principle is giving a soul to the code act in order to act as a Azure resource, or just suit the application with a identity. However, on the other side, the managed identities are for the resources of for the native Azure resources. Graph API support limited for those resources. Must be from Azure only, some graph scopes. Full access, Microsoft Graph delegated and app scopes. Credentials, no credentials, uses Azure managed tokens, uses client ID, client secret or certificate. Lifespan, tied to resource or independently user assigned. Must be managed, rotate, secret control access manually. Ideal for Azure hosted apps needing secure hands-off authentication. Automation, external services, CI/CD, blah blah. And to use Azure function, reading from Key Vault, manage identity. Python script running on your laptop calling graph, service principal. Of course, if it's not running inside the Azure, then service principal. CI/CD pipeline deploying resources to Azure, service principal. Yeah, makes sense. Azure VM calling Microsoft Graph securely. Manage identity if graph permissions supported. External app needing Azure AD authentication. What if I have an application? Let's first ask this. If I have a web app, can I use managed identity to authenticate? Laptop. against identity to if I have a web app Azure web app, can I use managed identity? Can I assign a managed identity to the web app in order to fetch secrets from key vaults like function apps? Yes, absolutely, you can assign a managed identity to an Azure web app, part of the Azure App Services, just like you can with Azure Apps, and then use it to securely access Azure Key Vault scripts. Azure Web App Identity assign blah blah. Grant access to Key Vault to allow the web app's identity to get secrets. Azure Key Vault set policy. Then I don't need app registration. For the code running in Azure to communicate authenticated with other Azure resources. Exactly. This is very good. And probably for Power BI API, yeah, this is also Power BI API is graph, and there are limited access, but can be tested. I think now I understand better. If you don't run that application outside of the Azure, or if you don't need user interaction, if you don't need user to log in, but I think that login part is not part of the, yeah, it's a bit part of the app registration, but also it is also part of the enterprise applications. Nice, getting better and better, eh? Azure Identity. Very good. Did I read this part? I think I did. Exercise. Retrieve configuration settings from Azure App Configuration. Hoppa. Azure App Config Create. One moment. App configuration. I'm taking some notes. Right. This is how to create an app config store or configuration resource. App config create. Yeah, app config create store creation. App config store creation. User principal. Resource ID. To retrieve configuration information, you need to assign your Entra user to app configuration data read role. Okay. I think this is about my role, right? Because I will use the CLI. Yes, it's outside the Azure environment. Resource ID. Very good. Then I have role assignment. Here, role assignment is critical, right? First, we created the store role assignment. Azure role create assign source principal, which is me. Role app config data reader, and the scope the resource ID. Very good. And we have app config again, like this one, without this one for this time. This time it's not create app config. Key vault public set configuration name, key and value. Not key vault and key value. Means key value set. This is an entry. Very good. And the second one was the role assignment. Now key value creation. Like this one, right? Key value. .NET application, Azure identity, very good. Microsoft extensions configuration. Configure Azure App Configuration. Why it's under extensions? I don't know. Yeah, default credential options. Configuration builder. Builder.add Azure App Configuration and options. Connect. Add Azure App Configuration as source. This connects to Azure and loads configuration values. This is a very unique style, huh? Very confusing too. It's not straightforward. Oh, yeah, JavaScript guys doesn't choose that kind of complexity. Module assessment. What is the purpose of labels in Azure App Configuration? Labels are used to differentiate key values within the same key in app configuration. Values with the same key. Exactly. Labels are used to encrypt. No. Labels are used to limit. No. What is the role of a feature manager in managing application features? A feature manager is a rule of evaluating the state of a feature's flag? No. Is a variable with a binary state of on or off? No, this is flag. Also, this is a filter. A feature manager is an application package that handles the lifecycle of all feature flags in an application. Very good. What is the purpose of using customer managed keys in Azure App Configuration? To enable authentication with Microsoft Entra ID, permanently store the unwrapped encryption key? No. To encrypt sensitive information at rest? Yeah, you can do encryption, but not with the managed identity, with the service, right? Permanently store unwrapped. Unrelevant. Oh shit. What is the purpose of using customer managed keys? Ah, man. This is not a identity. I'm confused. This is not user assigned identity. This is a secret, the key, the certificate for the encryption. You store in key vault and you fetch from Azure App Configuration. These kind of problems I'm facing. Let's find the correct one then. To enable authentication with the Microsoft Entra ID. No, this is done by user assigned managed identity or app registration. Permanently store the unwrapped encryption key. Encrypt sensitive information at rest. It should be this one. Permanently store unwrapped encryption key. I know unwrapped encryption key is stored in Azure App Configuration service, but it's not permanent. It's temporary. Then you need to refresh it constantly. But it's not related with the customer managed keys. Maybe it is, or yeah, maybe it is. because you use the key to decrypt or unwrap, in this case. No, but this is about the key. Permanently stored unwrapped encryption key. Yes, unwrapped encryption key. You store the unwrapped encryption key in the app configuration service. But not using this customer managed key. This is already a customer managed key. You don't use customer managed key to unwrap customer managed key. No. Yeah, the option, the correct option is this one: encrypt sensitive information at rest. Let's try again if we can do it. Module assessment. Very good. I think it was this and then this. Differentiate keys. Yes, the feature management is the bundle. And then this one, the sensitive information at rest. Very good. And that's all, guys. See you later.